Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is At the Helm Sports. I'm your host, Derek Helm. Thank you for joining me for episode 150. Please be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews if you're watching on YouTube. Take a second, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that like button. In the comment section, let me know. So far this NFL season, where do you rate it? On a scale of 1 to 10, how terrible have these games been? I'm going to say somewhere around a 4. That might even be a little bit generous because it's obviously been pretty disastrous through 3 weeks and partially to blame, like we said last week. Maybe some of it's the preseason. A lot of it is all of these injuries. It just doesn't seem like there are enough quarterbacks in the league. And I think a big thing that people aren't talking about is the coaching. It just seems like a lot of these coaches are just they think they're a lot smarter than they are rather than just coaching a football game. And I think that's playing into it a lot. But let me know in the comments section what your thoughts are. Now, obviously, it's week 4, so we're going to be diving in. I'm going to go through all the games, 12 games on the main slate for Sunday for Draftkings. We'll tie in a couple bets here and basically just go through everything game by game. So we might as well jump right into it because we do have 12 games on the slate. And first up, we have New Orleans at Atlanta. Atlanta is laying 1.5 points at home. The total is 42. Now, this game could be interesting because it is in a dome. So I do think that from that standpoint, obviously the conditions are going to be good. We see these teams kind of have high scoring games when they play each other. 42 is not crazy highs, but Atlanta has looked good at times and then inept at times. So don't really know how they're going to come out here and look. New Orleans defense has looked pretty good. Obviously, New Orleans offense was otherworldly the first 2 weeks and then came back to earth last week. But I do think that there are some pieces you could play in this game. Now, I don't necessarily know that I want to stack either of these quarterbacks. Played a lot of Carr last week. Obviously, that didn't work out very well. But I think as long as Kamara is healthy, he's fine at 7,600 just with the workload he gets. We know he has the touchdown upside. Chris Olave at 6,500, I think is definitely still in play. His price hasn't changed at all. It was kind of odd how they didn't get him involved until later in the game. And then Shaheed is still in play here at 5,500. Just missed on a couple long bomb touchdowns last week. Now, obviously, he can't score those every week, but I definitely think it's within the realm of possibilities that he scores a lot of them. So I do like him still here this week. Not really going to chase Foster Moreau or Jawan Johnson. Taysom Hill might be back in this game, so just something to keep an eye on there. And then on the Atlanta side, like I said, I don't necessarily know if I want to stack Kirk Cousins here, but I do like Bijan quite a bit. 7,400 I think is a good price for him. Hasn't really lived up to that price tag yet. He's been fine, but you'd want a little bit more out of him at this high of a price tag. But I do like the pass catchers here quite a bit. Drake London, 6,200, I think is pretty good. Scored a touchdown in back-to-back games, so you definitely like that. I love Darnell Mooney here, 4,400 with the amount of targets that he's been getting the past couple weeks. I think it makes a ton of sense to go there. He seems to really have built a rapport with Kirk Cousins, so I do like him. And then Kyle Pitts fell down at the 1 yard line, 2 yard line last week, so they're trying to get him the ball in the red zone, 4,800 at tight end. You can do much worse. So I think there are definitely usable pieces here. I think if I was going to go with the Kamara side, I'd probably, if I wanted to do a skinny stack, probably go Kamara and Mooney, just Mooney for the savings with how expensive Kamara is. I definitely don't think that I want to pair Bijan with Kamara. That just gets a little too expensive. And although they are very talented, having two running backs going against each other, probably not really the way I would like to go. But I definitely do like skinny stacks in this game. So probably we'll be going with an Olave, Mooney, maybe a Shaheed London, or if you wanted to throw Pitts in there with one of the pass catchers from New Orleans, I think that makes sense. But that's really all I'm looking at this game. 42 is not a crazy high total, so maybe you could look at the over in this one, but I don't know. I'm not overly looking to stack this game, but I definitely do think that it could go over that number. Next, we have Cincinnati at Carolina. Now, this total is pretty high, 48.5. Cincinnati, 4.5 point favorites on the road. Obviously, with Dalton coming in, Carolina looked really good last week. He threw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. So obviously, a lot of people are going to play this game. Cincinnati looked terrible Monday night defensively. They look great offensively. So they should be fine offensively. There's plenty of pieces. I would expect Burrow stacks to be very, very high owned this week. I don't necessarily want to dismay anybody from doing that. Just keep in mind this game is probably going to be incredibly highly owned. So if you do go there and you think you're going to go with a Burrow Jamar stack and bring it back with Deontay, that is going to be extremely, extremely chalky this week. I do think that T. Higgins is definitely in play here. And I don't know that he'll necessarily go overlooked, but he should definitely be lower owned than Jamar Chase. So definitely keep that in mind. And then Yoshi Voss, I don't expect him to score a touchdown every week, and that's basically what's been bailing him out. He has 3 touchdowns on the year and only 7 receptions. But if you were making Burrow stacks and you really wanted to overstack this game, I think it would be fine with Jamar and him, or Higgins and him. And then Gesicki could be in play. 3,500 isn't terrible for him. As I said, I mean, it's going to be a common theme for this week. Tight end is just such a disaster. Take your pick. So I think that's probably the way to go this week is because of how disastrous tight end has been. Using your tight end in your quarterback stack is probably your best bet this week. So at least you have some correlation there and can try and get away with it that way. On the Carolina side, I'm not going to chase Dalton at 5,300. It's definitely enticing because of the salary savings and with how terrible Cincinnati's defense looks. If Dalton comes out here and throws for 300 yards again, he can definitely pay off this price tag. But I'd probably rather more so just use Chuba Hubbard 5,700 and what's going to be a chalky Deontay Johnson 5,600 and use them in Burrow stacks or skinny stacks, maybe with a Jamar and bringing it back with one of those two, or a T Higgins and bringing it back with one of those two. Now, I will say with Chuba, he had a great game last week, but we did see Miles Sanders in there quite a bit on third down and in the 2 minute drill. So if they do get behind in this game, I could see Chuba taking not necessarily a back seat, but maybe not getting as many touches as we would like. And at 5,700, he doesn't have to go off for you. It's a good price, but it's a lot more expensive than what he's been to this point of the season. Deontay looks like a great play just from a volume standpoint, but potentially more of a cash play. Now, with how terrible the Cincy defense is, maybe he can get you there in a GPP, but I actually like the upside of Xavier Legette here at 4,800. Thielen's on the IR. 4,800 for Legette. He definitely has some big play upside. He has some run after the catch ability. So I do like him there, maybe even a little bit sneakier if you really did want to stack this game. Jonathan Mingo should get some extra opportunities. He's only 3,300, but Legette would probably be my go-to there, especially in GPPs, and Deontay would definitely be the preferred play in cash games. Next, we have the Rams at the Bears. 41 is the total here. Bears laying 2.5 points at home. The Rams have not looked good defensively. I mean, they were able to still pull that out last week against San Francisco, so you got to give them credit for that. But they're allowing 13.6 yards per reception and 12, 20 plus yard receptions already this year. So they have not been good defending the pass. So that definitely gives you a little bit of hope as far as the wide receivers go on Chicago. Now, I don't want to play Caleb Williams. I just think this offensive line is too terrible. He had a good game last week, but a lot of that was on volume. So I'd probably rather just play one of DJ Moore or Roman Dunze. DJ Moore, 25% target share. We know he has some big play upside. As I just said, this Rams defense is definitely susceptible. And then Adunze definitely seems like Caleb's favorite target. So 6,200 or 5,200 for him and 6,700 for DJ Moore. I think they are absolutely in play. Cole Kmet, 4,400 could get popular. He's overtaken Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett was an afterthought last week. Kmet had a great game. Again, a lot of that was volume. So I'd be careful. I wouldn't really expect him every week to go off, but those three are definitely in play against a weak Rams defense. And then on the Ram side, I Kyron Williams 7,300 to be pretty popular. Obviously, he's not going to score 3 touchdowns every week, but as we saw last year and as we saw last week, it's definitely in the realm of possibilities. He's getting all the work here, so he would probably be the only one I would want to go to. We did see that it was Tutu Atwell last week, but it could be Demarcus Robinson this week. It could be Tyler Johnson. It could be Whittington. Really don't know. And I could see this being a very, very slow paced game. These teams don't run at a very high pace, don't run a lot of plays. So really don't want to overstack this game. It most likely would be if I was going to do a skinny stack, probably Kyron and maybe bring it back with an Adunze. I guess you could do it with DJ Moore, but most likely I'm probably just looking at playing one of those three or potentially a Komet and being on my way in this one. Next, we have Minnesota at Green Bay. 43.5 is the total in this one. Green Bay, 2.5 point favorites at home. Don't know if we're getting Jordan Love back. It seems like it's definitely a possibility based on this line. I would say that the line probably implies that Love will be back. I think they'd be dumb to bring him back. I get that this is a divisional game. You don't want Minnesota to get out to a huge lead and be undefeated, but Green Bay has some aspirations of their own. And I think if you rush Jordan Love back, you're playing with house money. You got 2 wins with Malik Willis, and maybe you don't think that he can beat this Minnesota team, but you are at home. I don't know. I wouldn't rush him back. And just if Love does come back, we've seen it many times where quarterbacks come back from an injury, maybe a little bit too early, a la Joe Burrow last year, and they don't look right. So it does scare me a little bit in this game, and I don't necessarily know that I would want to stack this one up. Josh Jacobs has been okay. 6,600 is a good price for him. So if you wanted to go there, I think it's fine. On the other side, Aaron Jones obviously has looked great. 6,400 for him is definitely a good price. He should probably be a little bit higher owned, but we did see him put up a dud in week 2. So that's definitely in the realm of possibilities. So you can definitely poke holes in both sides there, but Aaron Jones would be my preferred play of those two. Justin Jefferson is obviously a freak of nature. 8,700, though, we need him to do more than what he's been doing so far. Obviously, he has the huge play upside. Obviously, he is wide open on every single play, but we need Minnesota to be pushed a little bit more here for him to pay off the salary because he needs a little bit more volume and he needs the upside of being able to score 2 touchdowns, being able to go for 170 yards and 10 receptions. So I do think that that's definitely a possibility in this game, but Green Bay's defense has looked pretty good. So I'm really not crazy about stacking this game, but I would definitely say that Aaron Jones is in play. Jefferson is in play. Naylor has been catching touchdowns every week, but he's at 4,900 now. I think that's a little bit too high for what he's going to offer. He's not offering volume, but maybe he can score a touchdown every week, but probably not. So it's probably Jefferson and Aaron Jones for me. And then on the Green Bay side, I'd consider Josh Jacobs. I'm probably not going to end up getting there. And then Jaden Reed, 6,000. I definitely think he's the guy that you want. They're manufacturing touches for him. He's in there a lot more than we thought he was going to be. You know, it kind of looked like for a little while there that he was only going to be in 3 wide receiver sets, but he's definitely the guy you want. Now, if Jordan Love is back and healthy, some of these guys can come into play, but I just would rather see it for a week than really chase there. So for me, it's probably Jaden Reed, Jefferson, and Aaron Jones are really the only ones I'll be looking to play in this one. Next, we have Jacksonville at Houston, and Jacksonville looks dead. And for that reason, with the way that the season has been going, you should probably bet them outright to win because that's basically the way that things have been going here. They are 7 point underdogs in Houston. Now, Houston laying 7 points at home seems like a big number in division, but I don't know if Jacksonville can really do anything. Houston does have a little bit of a pass rush. 45.5 though is the total here. So most of that is obviously coming from Houston with a 26 point implied total, but they do expect Jacksonville to score some points here. So I definitely think that some of these guys are definitely in play. You can make a case for Trevor Lawrence stacks, 5,700. Nobody is going to play him whatsoever. So if you wanted to go there, I think you can make a case in larger field. You can go Kristen Kirk, 5,200. Obviously, we saw him get a good amount of volume, and he can pay it off with receptions at a low price. Brian Thomas, the fact that he's 5,400 and more expensive than Kirk is kind of crazy because he hasn't really been great. He's definitely looked good. He's looked the best out of all these receivers, but he's not really getting the volume. So I definitely think on limited volume, though, he can pay it off with his talent. And in this game, if Jacksonville gets down and has to throw the ball quite a bit, we could see a big play or two from Brian Thomas. So I don't hate it. If you wanted to pair Lawrence with the two of them, I think it makes sense as Kirk gets a lot of the underneath stuff and Thomas is the deep threat. Gabe Davis is just an afterthought at this point. I'm sure he'll have some big games here or there, but I'm not going to chase it. Evan Ingram may be back in this game. If that's the case, you can play him. Worry is, does he tweak that hamstring first week back? So 4,600 for him might be a little expensive. Maybe stay away for a week. If he can't go, Brenton Strange 3,100 is definitely in play. Got the volume 2 weeks ago. Got the touchdown last week, so he's absolutely in play at tight end there. He's one that I could see getting a little bit popular just at 3,100 with how involved he's been with Ingram out. So probably a really good cash game play there. And then CJ Stroud is 7,000. I do think that keeps his ownership down, but we just saw Allen throw for 15 touchdowns in what was basically a half on Monday night. So I, I think people seeing that they will go to Stroud quite a bit and probably for good reason. But the $7,000 price tag should keep his ownership down a little bit. But I do like him. I think I will have some Stroud stacks. Prefer to pair him with Nico at 7,200. Diggs obviously looked good last week, 6,600, but I think Diggs will have his spots here and there. And I think last week was a little bit more of a check down game and the shorter intermediate routes where I think he's going to live. So I think it brings Nico into play a little bit more. Tank Dell is currently questionable. I think he's going to probably try and play through it. And at 5,400, he hasn't really been involved, but we know he has some big play upside. If he is able to go, I think you can make a case for him in Stroud stacks. But Nico would definitely be my preferred play. Diggs is definitely in play. I think it's a little expensive to pair the two of them with Stroud, so it would probably be Stroud and one of them would be my preference, and then bringing it back with one of those pass catchers on Jacksonville. ATN is in play at 7,000. I definitely think that he's going to get enough volume and is talented enough to maybe be played here. But at that price, I'd probably just rather go to some of the other guys here. And then Joe Mixon coming back, it's potentially back 6,800. I think if Stroud does get popular, that could be a sneaky play to kind of have leverage against Stroud lineups or some of these wide receivers. But that's probably a little bit risky first week back, but it definitely would be sneaky and a low owned play. If he can't go, I'm not crazy about Cam Akers. 5,300 price went up a little bit, but I don't know. He's probably got a better matchup this week and a better game script than what they saw last week. So you can make a case for it, but that's pretty much all we're looking at here. Next, we have Pittsburgh at Indy. This one's going to be really quick because I don't know. This game could be over pretty quickly. I could see it being pretty low scoring. 40 is the total. Pittsburgh laying 2.5 on the road. So I kind of like Pittsburgh there. I do think that they are the better team. Actually, sorry, they're laying 1.5. And I might just take the money line and take Pittsburgh minus 125. I think that they are the better team here. I think the defense causes problems, and I don't think that Jonathan Taylor can bail out Anthony Richardson here. So I like Pittsburgh in this game from a betting standpoint. From a fantasy standpoint and a DraftKings standpoint, there's really not much here. I'm not playing Anthony Richardson. As I said, Jonathan Taylor, 7,700, not catching passes against this defense. I don't love it. Justin Fields actually right now is showing up for me as the best points per dollar quarterback on the slate, which is pretty crazy. I didn't expect to see that, but that's what it's telling me. So 5,500, I get the price is pretty low, but the volume really hasn't been there from a passing standpoint. He hasn't been running as much. We do know that he has the capability of doing so. So if he does decide to take off in this game and run and scores a rushing touchdown at 5,500 and then throws for another, he can absolutely pay that off. Definitely in play, I would say, just more so in some larger field GPPs. Harris with no Jalen Warren, maybe he's in play at 5,600, but Cordero Patterson is probably just ends up being a pain in the ass to him. But Najee is definitely in consideration. And I like Pickens here at 5,700. I think that he has some big play upside against this defense. They've been, he's been their number one wide receiver by far. So I think you can make a case there. And then, as I said, tight end is a disaster. So if you want to play Fryermuth, fine. I'm not trying to play any of the pass catchers on the indie side. I don't think that Richardson can really do much. And as I said, I'm worried about this Pittsburgh defense and what they're going to do. So I don't see this being a very high scoring game. For me, it would probably just be Fields, maybe even naked by himself, or if you wanted to pair him with Pickens, and be on your way. But as I said, currently showing me that Fields is the best point per dollar on the slate, and I really was not expecting that. So we might as well go through what I have so far for points per dollar plays. At quarterback, it's Fields 5,500, Kyler Murray 6,800. We'll get to that game. Obviously, that's a great spot for both sides. So the third highest points per dollar quarterback is Jaden Daniels 6,500, and that game is going to be an incredible atmosphere. We'll get to it in depth later, but those two should absolutely be in play and be some of the highest owned. So I definitely see why they are popping up there. Fields was definitely interesting when I saw that one pop up, but as I said, if he is running the ball, scores a touchdown and throws for one, he could definitely pay off that price tag. So it makes sense. Then on the running back side, points per dollar, $8,000 for Saquon Barkley. But with the workload he's had and the upside he has, the fact that all the receivers are hurt, I get it. I definitely think he's going to be the focal point of that offense. And with what he's shown behind that offensive line this year, it definitely makes sense to pay up for him at 8,000. One that I don't necessarily agree with is Brees Hall, 7,800. Just with Braylon Allen playing a lot more snaps and eating into him a little bit, I think 78 is a little bit high of a price tag. Now, he's Brees Hall. He can obviously produce unlimited touches, but I just think that the lack of volume lowers his ceiling just a little bit. I still think he's a good play. I think that he will go a little bit overlooked because most people will probably just pay the $200 to go up to Barkley, but I don't know if I necessarily agree points per dollar that he's one of the best on the slate. Then we have James Conner, 6,500. Definitely agree with that. Obviously, he is their entire backfield there. He's been incredibly efficient and effective this year. Last week, not great, but a lot of that is that Detroit defense. They shut down the run. So definitely like Connor there. I think it makes sense in that game to go to him. And then if we go to wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. As I said, this game is going to continue to show up. So 7,500 for him. If McBride can't go, he should see a huge increase in volume, even though it's hard to see an increase in volume over what he saw last week with 10 targets. Then Deontay Johnson, 5,600. He saw a ton of targets last week as well, also in a good game environment. So it makes sense. 5,600. I worry a little bit about his upside. So from GPP standpoint, maybe you don't go there. Maybe a little bit better of a cash play. And then Rashi Rice, 7,300, just absolute target monster. He's got a possibility of getting 10 receptions on any given week. So I definitely see the three of those standing out and making a ton of sense from a points per dollar standpoint. Then tight end, which is an absolute disaster. We have Gesicki, 3,500. He's been involved, and obviously with the way that offense is clicking, he has a chance at scoring a touchdown and having some production every week. So I think that's fine. 3,500. Obviously, Dallas Goddard price increased up to 5,100, but everybody's hurt on that offense. There are no receivers. So after seeing what Goddard did last week, he should have a good amount of volume. And definitely, I wouldn't expect anything near what we saw last week, but has a pretty safe floor and a little bit of upside compared to what he generally does with all these receivers hurt. And then Tyler Conklin at 3,600. Just I think Rodgers spreads the ball out quite a bit, so maybe not a ton of upside with Conklin, but he was definitely involved. And Rodgers likes attacking the middle of the field, especially if you're going to play the two deep safeties on him. And Conklin could absolutely get there. So that's what we're looking at for points per dollar. But if we dive back into the slate, we can go to the next game, and it is that Denver at New York Jets. And this one, probably not a lot of guys that I'm going to be looking to play. 38.5 is the total, so not expecting a lot of scoring here. The Jets are 7.5 point favorites on the road. That might be a little bit steep. Bo Nix should get better as the weeks go on. He looked better last week. The Jets defense at home should be pretty formidable though. So probably don't want to play anybody on the Denver side. Obviously, the way you want to attack this Jets defense is on the ground, and Denver has no running game to speak of. So probably really not looking at anything as far as that goes. As far as the Jets go, I will have some Roger stacks at some point this year. It's not going to be this week. I think this game's probably going to be over pretty quickly. They're probably not going to have to do much offensively. As I said, you can make a case to play Brees Hall at 7,800, but I worry a little bit about the ceiling. Now, he is Brees Hall. He could bust off two 60-yard touchdowns and absolutely pay it off. But I'll probably be a little bit underweight on him or potentially Xing him out of the player pool altogether. Braylon Allen, 5,400. I do expect some people to play him. I don't think he's getting enough of a workload, but he's been effective. So 5,400 isn't a terrible price for him. I'd rather see him maybe around 5,000 or even a little bit below. So probably not going there. Garrett Wilson, 6,900. I do think that he needs more volume to be the guy that he can be. Him and Rodgers don't seem like they're on the same page yet. I do think that once they start clicking, we could see fireworks here. But Patrick Surtain, not really a ton of volume and not on the same page. I'm really not necessarily going to go there yet. 6,900 I could see is enticing for some people, but I'd probably rather go to Mike Williams at 5,100 if Sertan's going to be on Garrett Wilson more. We saw Williams a little bit more involved in the offense. He has the big play upside. He just missed the touchdown last week. So 5,100 I think is a good price for him for what he offers. I don't want to chase Alan Lazard. He's becoming the Taysom Hill of this team where it's just he's annoying and they just Aaron Rodgers loves him, so he's gonna keep getting involved. So 4,300, I mean, maybe I guess you could make a case for it, but I'm probably not going there. And as I said, I really don't want to stack this game at all. So that's probably all I'm looking at is maybe a Mike Williams, maybe a Brees Hall, and that's about it. Next, we have Philadelphia Eagles at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 45 is the total here. Philly laying 2.5 points on the road. Uh, I don't know what to think about this one because obviously Philly's offense probably not going to be great here with no wide receivers, but Tampa's defense is terrible too. Antoine Winfield was out last week. No Vita Villa. So definitely got to see what those guys are up to if they're going to be out again. Maybe the Eagles can still do something. And you can definitely make a case for Barkley at 8,000. He's just been an absolute monster. With no Vita Villa, obviously he should have plenty of running lanes. So I definitely like Barkley here at 8,000. He should be the focal point of the offense. Already said Goddard, 5,100 should get a ton of targets with all these receivers out. I don't think anybody's going to go to Hurts at 7,200, but if they just come out here and run an army style offense and run the ball 40 times with Hertz and Barkley, Hertz could still pay it off. And if he happens to throw a touchdown on top of it too, it's 7,200 is pretty high price tag, but we've seen him get there with just his legs before. So I do think that he's actually in play and could be a little bit sneaky. And as I said, this Tampa secondary is terrible. So maybe one of these wide receivers can get behind the defense and actually score a long touchdown. Now, I'm not going to chase that. I'm not going to play any of them with Hertz, but you can make a case to play Hertz here. And then as far as the Tampa side goes, we've seen the Eagles give up some big plays here, and I don't think they are very good from a pass defense standpoint. So I think Baker Mayfield stacks are actually in play here. Excuse me. So I would prefer Mike Evans in this one. I think he has the big play upside. I know it's been Godwin to this point, but I think a lot of that is more so the teams they've been playing. It's been a little more beneficial to target the slot and a little bit underneath. So Godwin is only $200 less than Evans. I'm going Evans in this one. And I definitely will play some Godwin. I definitely will play a ton of Evans. I'm staying away from the backfield. Rashad White just looks absolutely broken. I could see some people going to Bucky Irving. He looks explosive, but 5,300. I think White is still going to be involved enough that it limits what Irving can do. So I really don't like that. So I would most likely go with maybe a Baker to Evans and an Barkley bring back. I think that can make sense. Or if you just wanted to do Hurts and one of these wide receivers on Tampa Bay, I think that makes sense as well. But pretty easy in that game. You know exactly who to go to, and probably don't really need to target too much of it. So next we have the late games, and I like what they did, last week, obviously having splitting it up between the early games and late games. This week, not as much. We have 8 early games and four late, but works for me. As long as we have more than 3 afternoon games, I'm cool with it. So let's keep that a thing. Next, we have Washington and Arizona. This is the game. The only total over 50. Arizona laying 3.5 points at home. Now, what we have seen from Washington's defense, obviously you want to target them. So I think Kyler stacks are absolutely huge this week. Probably very, very popular with potentially no McBride with a concussion. Harrison should be incredibly popular, and he's definitely in play at 7,500. Then James Conner definitely in play 6,500. I think this Washington defense is just terrible all around, not just in the secondary. So I do like that as well. With no McBride, I actually like Michael Wilson quite a bit at 4,200. Greg Dortch should play 4,300, but probably more so a PPR target guy. So I like the upside of Wilson a little bit more. And he's actually $100 cheaper too. So I think you're fine going there. Then at the absolute min at tight end, as I said, tight end is a disaster. So if you wanted to pair Kyler with Tip Raymond, he's the second tight end that should play instead of McBride here. So that could work. But love Kyler stacks this week. Definitely going to be going there. And you could definitely make a case for Jaden Daniels stacks as well, 6,500. So if you wanted to go Daniels and find a receiver to pair him, I think it's fine. Obviously, you would prefer McLaurin. I do think that that'll be quite popular with McLaurin only at $5,800. Noah Brown, I like quite a bit at 3,800. I do think he has some big play upside and will get more involved in this offense as time goes on here. Not chasing any of the other guys, though. Ertz doesn't really have the upside at 4,000. I'd probably rather pay down lower for some of the other options at tight end. So for me, it would probably be Jaden Daniels, probably even naked, and bring him back with a Connor or a Marvin Harrison, maybe. If you wanted to pair him with McLaurin, I definitely think that makes some sense there, and you could definitely stack it that way. And then Brian Robinson Jr., 6,100 should absolutely be in play. Probably, definitely from a cash game standpoint as well, because Eckler's out with a concussion. So he should see a ton of work here. Like him quite a bit in this game as well. So a lot of pieces that you can play in this game. I do think that a lot of my lineups are going to be allocated to this one. I don't know that it necessarily gets to that 50-point total, but there's so many pieces that you can play in it, and it's a lot cheaper than what we saw last week with the Detroit and Arizona game. So it's definitely affordable, and it's definitely the game to target this week. So I like it quite a bit. Next, we have New England at San Francisco. This is one not going to be targeting too much. 39.5 is the total. San Francisco laying 10 points at home. San Francisco's banged up. New England's banged up. Ramondre Stevenson would probably be the only one I would even consider. but as 10-point favorites or 10-point underdogs on the road, I don't even think that he can really get in play here. For me, it would probably be Jordan Mason, 6,700. The price is a little bit more elevated. He didn't completely pay off last week, but still was fine. So I think his ownership comes down from what we've seen over the last 2 weeks, which probably makes him a much better play. I actually like him quite a bit there at 6,700. Purdy stacks are in play. He's only 6,100. Incredibly efficient offense here. They score 24 points a game. I think 24.75 is their team implied total in this one. So Ayuk hasn't looked great to this point, but 10 targets last week. He should heavily be involved. Most people will probably play Jawan Jennings, but his price is all the way up there to 5,600. He's obviously not going to score 40 points again. So I definitely think that you can make a case for Ayuk here. It should be a great game for him. Christian Gonzalez could be on him, but I'm not overly concerned. We saw the Jets get there through the air last week, and I definitely think that you can make a case here for Ayuk or Jennings if you wanted to pair him with Brock Purdy. And then obviously I love Jordan Mason here, but that's really all we're looking at for this one. Next we have Kansas City at the Chargers. Now this one I really don't like either. 39 is the total. Kansas City laying 8 points. Probably not going to get Herbert in this game. I mean, maybe, but they'd be stupid to play him. I get it's a divisional game, but just this one's even more clear cut to me than the Jordan Love is. You have a bye week coming up. Let Herbert get healthy and then come back and you can be playing better ball. As far as Kansas City goes, I want nothing to do with Mahomes. 7,100 just doesn't have the upside right now, barely throwing the ball down the field. I don't want to chase this backfield. Carson Steele got a ton of work last week, but is he going to get all the work this week? Maybe, but what's the upside against this defense? Kareem Hunt was activated, but is he going to be involved? So, really don't like that. Rashi Rice, obviously, 7,300 is a great play, great cash play, has the upside, has a safe floor. I don't want to chase Xavier Worthy. I want him more in games that I think are going to be a little bit higher scoring and maybe where I do want to play Mahomes and pair him with him. I do think it's a sneaky week for Kelsey, 5,800. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Kelsey is just washed, but I could see this being a correction game where just all of a sudden he comes out and scores 2 touchdowns and they over target him a bit. So I think it's a sneaky play from a large field GPP standpoint. But for the most part, all I really want here is Rashi Rice, and that's about it. I want nothing to do with the Los Angeles side, especially if Herbert is out. Just I think they're just going to try and run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, and I'm not going to chase any of it. I'm not going to play the Dobbins or Gus Edwards or any of them. So that's really what we're looking at in this one. Last game, this one's probably the grossest game on the board. Cleveland at Vegas, 37 is the total. Vegas laying a point at home. Pierce is talking about business decisions and potentially starting Aiden O'Connell. And if that's the case, then fuck this game. I just I'd much rather Minshew for Bowers for Devontae Adams. Now we did see O'Connell over target Adams, so maybe he can have a good game here, but I think it's going to be tough with Adams. You're going to have to pick your spots and just play him with conviction because there's going to be games we see like last week where he doesn't really do much and games where he scores 2 touchdowns. So I'm not going to chase it. I'm not going to chase Bowers. I don't think Cleveland can do anything. No, the offensive line's terrible. Deshaun Watson is terrible. Cooper's banged up. I want nothing to do with this game whatsoever. So that's basically all we're looking at here. So that's basically all we got so far. I will say that I do have a couple bets in so far. I have Deontay Johnson over 5.5 receptions. And I definitely think that is going to get steamed. So when you're listening to this, I would go and check it. I got it at minus 113. I could see that number going up. I could see the juice definitely going up. So definitely keep an eye on that. As I said, I haven't made the bet yet, but I'm thinking about Pittsburgh money line minus 125. I do think that they are without a doubt the better team there, and I just don't see Indy being able to come away with a win there, even though they are at home there. And then I want to look at what Evans' yardage total is, because I do think that he could have a big game here and have some big plays against that Philly defense. But that's what I'm looking at so far. Obviously, check thehelmsports.com, the My Bets tab. I will have everything up over there. Might even put out a quick pod maybe Thursday or Friday night with some bets that I'm looking at, just a quick little 10-15 minute thing. Might do that going forward. So check back on the channel there, but that's going to do it for this week. As always, thank you for listening. Check out thehelmsports.com, check out yardsperfantasy.com. We'll have all my write-ups over there. And then themadlabmma.com have the contrarian corner every Sunday up there, giving us leverage plays that we can play and how we can kind of go against the chalk. All my bets get put in the Discord the second I make them, but that's going to do it for this week. I am your host, Derek Helm, and remember,
Just have fun out there.